Hello and welcome to the podcast Life's Second Act. This is the podcast that delves into the transformative phase of mid to later life, exploring its challenges, new directions and uncertainties that come with it. And we do that through talking to people who have a story to tell, an insight to share, or a snippet of something special. My name is Simon Burgess, and in this episode we speak to Anna Coscia.
But I grew up with this idea of stable job, proper job, making money. The thought of I'm going to try something that may fail and I'm on my own, it just was incredibly scary. And there's so much fear that you have to face and accept it. If I let fear take over, I'm dead. Learning to manage fear has been a massive thing for me, and I'm still dealing with it.
Anna is 55, and in her first act, she was a strategist in advertising for almost 28 years. She worked for businesses like Quiet Storm, Leo Burnett, and AMV BBDO. She loves studying people and deeply attuned with people's thinking and feelings and how this influences their behaviour. Over the years, she's managed teams, naturally taking on the role of coach and mentor, which is why in 2018 she started her shift into her second act and decided to train as a coach and do it as a side hustle. At the end of 2023, after coaching part-time for 5 years, she decided to make it her full-time job. She's also a qualified yoga teacher and brings her knowledge of breathing, meditation, and the mind-body connection into her coaching. Her whole life, she has been fascinated by the connection between the mind, emotions, and body, something she knows very well and knows what it means to have a very chatty and bossy mind, being unable to listen to your quieter, feeling self. Anna, welcome. How are you?
I'm good. Hi, Simon. Thank you. Thank you for doing this.
No, fantastic. So firstly, I think we connected on LinkedIn after I saw a few of your posts that really resonated me. They touched on people in their late 40s and 50s going through challenges with losing their jobs or feelings at this stage in their life. And so those kind of common experiences I think we're all going through. So after we initially spoke, I really wanted to dig and explore a little bit more into your personal journey and how it's going. And I understand a key part of your story now is about following your heart, finding more meaning, and really dealing with fear and self-doubt, and obviously navigating this middle ground. So before we get into it, a question I've asked a few people: if you had to put yourself on a scale at the moment of 1 to 10, 1 meaning I have no idea where I'm going, I'm a bit lost, 10 is it's all sorted, it's perfect. Where would you put yourself at the moment, Anna?
If this is about knowing where you want to get to, I think I'm probably a 7 or 8. If it is about getting there, then I would go and be lower.
Well, let's dig into this at the moment. Then, first of all, let's get some background to yourself. 28 years in advertising. It's a tough, demanding business. Was that something you always wanted to do from a young age? How did you end up in the advertising industry?
I fell a bit into it. I think that when I was at university, I was studying economics, which wasn't right for me, probably. But I then started to go into the sort of advertising and marketing side of it, which I liked. I quite liked. I had a great marketing teacher he's the one who really recommended me to an agency. And he had this contact with J. Walter Thompson at the time, which in Italy was like the school of advertising. And they asked him for an intern that he would recommend, and he just only recommended me. He said, there's only one person. They wanted somebody speaking good English, and I spoke good English at the time. So I just got this. And so without really thinking too much, I had heard about advertising. A friend of my father worked in a small agency, and I had a chat with him at some point. But I think it was very much almost kind of happened. And I wanted something creative. I come from a family of, teachers and academics. My sister studied math. So I was the rebel to go into advertising in my family. To this day, I think, my father, till he died, it wasn't clear what I did anyway. My mom to this day doesn't know what I do. So I think it started like that. And then I quite enjoyed it is really intense and it's really stressful and it was really long hours. But it was also fun. This is how I fell into it.
So at what point in those 28 years did you really find your groove with it and thought, no, this is good. I like this. I'm good at it. Obviously you were getting something out of it.
So I think in the beginning, I really liked it. I guess, it's when I was in Italy, I always think about, was that an Italian thing or was this a British thing? I was more junior. There was a lot more team spirit. It was less competitive. It was more sort of supportive. But I know that I wasn't senior, so probably it was a different place. And I wasn't a planner. I was in account management at the time. I wanted to become a planner. I worked with a British planner in J. Walter Thompson, and he used me a lot as a junior planner. So that's how I got to know strategy. And he was always telling me I should become a planner. So I did really enjoy it, but I just realized sometimes when you're doing 13, 14 hours days, you think, oh, can I go on like this forever? And then I moved to the UK. I managed to become a planner. I think as I became more senior, and it is a different culture, it was more individualistic maybe. Some agencies can be quite brutal. And I started to probably feel a bit of a fish out of water, I would say, at times. And then I think I enjoyed what I did with ups and downs. I enjoy some agencies that are very international, vibe and stuff. And it was really, really nice. So you asked me, I'm not answering your question because you asked me when I found my groove and I felt I'm really good at it. And I'm not sure I ever felt I was really good at it, but that's self-doubt.
Okay.
You always think I can be better. There are better people than me. When I became a planner, it was really very difficult in the beginning because all of a sudden you start to, it's not like creatives who are constantly, sharing their ideas and being beaten up by everyone. But as a planner, you start to share your thinking and you have to be creative, and it's much more daunting than in account management. At least that's the way that I experienced it. And so that was like self-doubt to the max at times. And then from my late 30s, I really started to, I think there was a little voice inside that started to say, what am I doing? Is this really what I want? But I ignored it for a long time.
Yeah, interesting. And 2018 then, you had another interest. Talk to me about 2018 and just your interest in coaching. Where did that come from?
I think that what happened is it's a few things. They say that you start to have some life quakes that really shake you. And I had one in 2017 when my father passed away. So he was ill. So we went through a few years, but then the last few months before he passed, they were really tough. And so losing him obviously is one of the big things that starts to make you think, ooh, life is precious. And my father was a gorgeous man, but he was very much, you need to work and you need to have a proper career and it's about making a living. It wasn't really, and it was a generation of, it wasn't like follow your passion, write a book. No, don't do that. But when he got to the end, it became a bit more like enjoy life. So make sure that you do the things that you really enjoy. And even though losing him was the biggest pain, this thing of realizing, oh God, am I really doing something that brings me joy? That question, the little question that was a bit, not loud enough, started to scream out at me. And then about 6 months later, I was made redundant. So in the space of 6 months, I had 2 losses. First one, much bigger than the second one. And in fairness, I reacted to redundancy differently from a lot of people because I was hurt in the very beginning, but it didn't last long. And all of a sudden I was like, wow, the universe is telling me something. And I found a job really quickly, by the way. So I was in a very different position from where a lot of people are now. It was different times and I was very lucky. But it gave me about 6 weeks as I was looking for a job, or even when I found a job, to really sit down and think, because you never do when you work. You're just lost in that circle of, performing and delivering. And so I sat back and I thought, oh, okay, what do I love? Because that's one of the difficult things for a lot of people is, yeah, fine, I don't want to do this anymore, but I don't know who I am, right? It's funny, you get to your 40s and you're like, I have no idea who I am. And I realized that at Leo Burnett's, I became at some point deputy head of planning. And I had an amazing boss who's still there. He always said I was a shepherd for the department. And I realized that the thing that I enjoyed probably the most of my job, potentially even more than doing strategy, was mentoring and coaching people. So without knowing it, I was doing it. So people coming to me and sharing their issues and helping them talk it through and think it through. And then I had people from other departments coming to me. So it wasn't just planning. It was like, oh, so-and-so told me if I had a problem to come and talk to you. And then I realized that people were coming to me and a lot of people would cry with me. And I was like, okay, is that good or bad? And then you realize, in a way it's good because people feel safe. They feel safe to show emotions, and that's such a big thing. And I think that was the thing that got me to coaching. I had thought about, shall I retrain as a therapist? And then I got to know coaching and realized that it can be really powerful. And when you become a coach, you train all your life. But I could have become a coach without any training because it's not a regulated profession. But I wanted to train, and I've been training I keep training. And then I started coaching a little by little. And again, self-doubt. When you start again and do something that you feel is new, even though you've been doing it for a long time. But that's how I fell into coaching. It developed.
So 2023, last year, I think September 2023, you decided to really shift into your second act. How did that change come about? What was the catalyst? Was it easy? Why the change? What happened?
It was not easy. I can tell you that. I had been thinking about that for a long time. I wanted more freedom. I wanted to do something I was very passionate about. I probably lost a bit of passion for strategy and advertising. I realized later on that I was doing lots of pitching in the agency I was at. And it's a great agency, but we were pitching all the time. And after 4 years of pitching, I think I was a bit exhausted and I didn't recognize the signs. So I always thought burnout is when you just can't get out of bed, when you can't function. I wasn't functioning that well. I just realized, only now that I'm studying burnout a bit more, I realized that I was probably burnt out. And so this feeling that I'm lacking passion, I'm lacking energy, I'm always exhausted and also not performing as well, it's actually burnout. But then you start to question yourself, I can't do this job anymore and I have no passion. And so getting there, I wish I had been able 2 years ago or a year ago to say, that's it, without having to go through the pain of not feeling well or realizing my health was being affected. I was genuinely unwell. The other thing was I did an amazing coach training last year. So on top of my body and my mind and that voice saying, come on, just do something you love, if not now, when? I also did this training and you get coached. So in the beginning, you work on yourself and you're coached. And I think that was very transformational for me because I went from, and this is also how I coach now, I realized that my way of looking at the world was just me being, if you look at it and think you're not good enough, you'll never make it. It's like me and the possibility of building my business, I couldn't see it. I didn't believe in it. And all of a sudden, through coaching and getting a bit more confidence, I started to see that was possible and overcame the fear because there is, it's fear. It's absolute fear.
So making that shift, was it supported by anything else? Your values, have they changed? What you think is important? I said in the intro about that sense of meaning and purpose now. Has that played a part in your shift as well?
100%. I think that's one thing that happens a lot in life for all of us. I think I've always been like somebody who watched, Unreported World and human rights documentaries. So I've always been somebody who wanted to do something more meaningful, even when I was younger, probably, and I was doing advertising. So I'm not sure the two were fitting together as well. But whenever I was working for a charity, I was getting very, very passionate. But I think that values change because you get to a point, and it can be late 30s, 40s, 50s, you just realize what I'm leaving behind is longer than what I've got in front. And then, as I say, you lose people close to you get ill, and all of a sudden you think, I've got a shorter amount of time, but it can still be a considerable amount of time. And I think that the values just change in the sense that you want to make a difference. You also realize I've got all this experience and I've got all this wisdom in a way, which it's not that just because you get older, you get wisdom. It's a different thing, but you feel like you have a lot to give and that you haven't really given it. So I think that I had this longing, physical, like in my stomach, to do something different and to contribute and help people.
And that feeling, because I've spoken to a few people, obviously, through this journey that I'm on myself, you do get those feelings. But sometimes I find it very difficult to really listen or act upon them because maybe there's a fear of the unknown. So I've been in the video business for 34, 35 years. That's all I've ever done. So I've said this before, but you take that away from me and I'm not quite sure what's left. So if you do get in these bubbling feelings, it's really hard sometimes, I find, to be able to know, do I act upon that or not? But obviously with yourself, it just built enough for you to go, now is the time. Did you realise it's a natural part of getting to this stage in life, do you think?
I think it is. I definitely think it is. It doesn't help that we live in an ageist society. So I think that as you get older in advertising and marketing, but I'm hearing from a lot of other industry, you start to feel irrelevant. So there's two things. One is this longing for doing something more meaningful, which I do genuinely think happens to a lot of people. And then on the other hand, you also realize that often you need a plan B, right? It's like I was discussing, how many retirement parties have you been to in advertising? None, right? Zero. So you do need a plan B, and so you need to reinvent yourself because our identities are so based on our jobs, which for me was probably not always the case. But once your job is taken away, when you start to think about doing something different, you really have to question, who I am, who am I? I used to be this, and we build probably different identities as we grow up and grow old. We play so many roles, and as human beings, we're very adaptable. We don't grow up in a vacuum. We absorb all the values of family, society. So often when people say you need to bring your own self to work or, be yourself, it's like, yeah, but a lot of people have no idea what their true self is because you've been somebody who you thought often you needed to be. So to actually shed all those layers and go deep down and find your true self, accepting that at some point you're completely naked, right? You're like, and put some more clothes on. So you need to get naked before you get dressed again. It's a very scary and it's a very scary moment. For me, I feel it lasted for quite a while.
I was going to say, so we're 8-9 months on now from when you made that big shift. How has that been? And what have you learned about yourself at the moment in terms of your journey? You had the courage to make that change. How do you now feel looking back? What's that journey been like?
It's challenging. It's very, very challenging. I also had some personal stuff getting in the way. So for a few months, I had to very much deprioritize building my business and look after, people close to me who were not well. So it's 9 months, but I feel like it's probably been 3 months of focus on it. I equate it a bit to when I learned to dive. So I learned to dive because I was scared of the deep sea. And I remember they took me down really deep, one of my first dives, which was crazy. I was in Italy, so, they were crazy. And I remember being down there at some point and I was getting really panicky. I was getting really scared and I realized if I let fear take over, I'm dead. And I think that it's similar to the journey. You have to deal with a lot of fear because, as you said, what stopped you from doing it? Often you can find all excuses that you want. And for some people, it's different. I don't have kids, so I don't have that responsibility. But I grew up with this idea of stable job, proper job, making money, the thought of not having income coming in, the thought of I'm going to try something that may fail and I'm on my own. It just was incredibly scary. So what I found is there's so many ups and downs and there's so much fear that you have to face and accept it. If you let fear take over, and money fears are really important. The minute that I realize and I catch myself starting to be worried about money, it all goes down the toilet, basically, because then you start it's almost a fight or flight. You're not really acting on what my passion is or following your purpose. You're just scared. And then you don't do anything. So learning to manage fear has been a massive thing for me. And I'm still dealing with it and accepting the ups and downs.
How have you managed that fear?
I've done a lot of work on myself. One of the things I'm very passionate about, and I've studied, and I'm really excited, I'm going to actually do the big training at the end of this year. It's somatic coaching, which is very much working a lot with the body, because all these emotions are physical experiences. And so for me, it's really doing some sort of using techniques or exercises that really get you into the body and starting to acknowledge and, feel the sensation, become very aware of the sensations in the body and staying with it. So learning to stay with the discomfort. When you're not able to stay with the discomfort, that's when you become very reactive, because you want that. It's painful, right? I often feel to me, it's like somebody's punched me in the stomach and I can't breathe. And I would do anything to actually stop that. And instead just staying there and almost thinking, okay, I'm feeling that way, and thinking, what are you trying to tell me? Stomach, punching the stomach, what are you trying to tell me? And then it goes, and then it comes back.
Yeah.
And you become very familiar with that. I think in the beginning it's more difficult, but I've now become very familiar. It doesn't mean that fear isn't knocking on the door and coming in full force, because it does. But I now know that it's normal, that I am human. And that's one way. The other thing is people, is getting support from people. Because you've gone from a team to being alone.
Have you found, since you started posting about your personal journey, which is what resonated with me, are you finding this is quite common? Are you having conversations with people similar to I am about where we are, trying to work it out? As you said, we've lost people, our friends may have lost jobs, so it's all a bit of I think I used the word to someone, I feel a bit discombobulated a little bit at the moment. It's just like, there's all this stuff going on. It's like trying to work your way through it. Have you found that with others that you speak to?
Yeah, a lot. I mean, I wrote a post on LinkedIn, and a couple of posts that got me a lot of connection and a lot of chats with people who are going through a similar, and it doesn't have to be, it's not that you necessarily have to leave your job and start something new, unless some people are forced to, let's be very honest. It could be that you want to find new meaning in your job, or meaning in a side hustle, right? Some people can keep their job, and some people genuinely love their jobs.
Yep.
It wasn't my case anymore, probably. Yeah, and I'm finding that I'm working now with a group of 8 amazing women, all sort of going through midlife, and all going through very similar, even though you're very, it's very subjective, but all going through very similar experiences. And you often think you're alone. And then you start talking to people and you realize, no, it's good. It's good and bad, because sometimes, when you talk to people who have lost their jobs, it's sad to see so many people in their 40s and 50s are there. But on the other hand, not feeling alone is incredibly powerful.
Yeah. Also, one of the interviews that I've done recently, which hasn't come out yet, but it might have done by the time your one comes out, was with a lady called Debbie Thomas, and she's a psychotherapist, and we were talking about this period in our life, and she said it's a stage like adolescence, and she said that it's a shift. Your first act is all about ego, wanting to get stuff, be that a life partner, a job, a career, a house, and then your second act is more about the psyche, more about the soul. I guess it's a case of then reevaluating what you've got and questioning, and it's natural.
Yeah, no, it is. It's what we were. I think when we first met, we were talking about. I think I read this book, Wisdom at Work, and they were talking about the first phase is accumulating, and the second one is editing. And I think it is. I think your definition of success can change quite a lot. Yeah. Not for everyone, but it can change quite a lot. Where before, as you said, it's skills, it's titles, it's money. And then all of a sudden you get to a point where you're like, oh, do I need all of this? What is working? And you become also a little bit more aware of what you do well and what you don't do well and what you enjoy and what. But I think it still takes, what I'm seeing from people is I get people who are coming and to coaching with me, and they're not even aware of some of this stuff. So it takes quite a lot of introspection and work to figure out, okay, I don't like that, or I am like that, but I am like that because, my family wanted me to be like that. Because, as human beings, we want to be loved and respected, and we tend to do anything that gets us that. And then it's habitual, and then you have to change. So it takes quite a lot of work for people to realize, oh, but I actually really like doing that, or I'm quite strong in that. And for example, writing on LinkedIn, I love writing. And since I was very little, I've always loved writing. And I'm now writing in a language that isn't mine, by the way, not mother tongue in English. And I had forgotten. And sometimes it doesn't really matter what I put on LinkedIn. It's just like, I just love doing it.
Yeah.
Some people are getting some pleasure out of it, but I had forgotten, and I put it back. I always wanted to write a book, but it was always, the creative stuff, you need to earn money. And now in the second half, in the second phase, I think, well, why not go back to something that gave me a hell of a lot of joy? And it's not for money, it's just for the pleasure of doing it.
And do you think you're becoming more confident as you're finding you're getting into more of a groove that you feel closer to, helping others and getting, I guess that's rewarding when you see change in other people? Is that giving you more confidence to be able to then say, yeah, maybe I will write that book, or maybe I'm just going to write those posts on LinkedIn just because I enjoy doing it? Is there a quiet confidence that you feel is coming into you now?
No. You get a bit more confident, a little bit. But I also think, this idea that at some point you'll be confident. I don't think I'll ever be confident. I'll be confident in doing things I've done a million times probably. But even as a strategist, every time I had a new challenge, a new brief, I was questioning myself. And I think that, is that a bad thing, really? Because if it's paralyzing and if it's stressful, so there needs to be the right balance. But I read somewhere, again, it may be the same book, Wisdom at Work, but that wisdom is finding the right balance between confidence and self-doubt, and knowing when to dial one up and when to dial the other one up. And this is also something I do when I work with people, is if we start to look at self-doubt like the enemy and the bad thing, sometimes it's just questioning yourself a bit. You see people are like, they have one idea, first idea, and it's like, that's great. And you're like, okay, that's good. But it's not wrong to actually say, okay, but maybe there's something better. And then you dig a bit deeper, and then so I think that sometimes if you can make self-doubt a friend and help you be better, that's not a bad thing. Two other things I find with self-doubt is in confidence. You only gain confidence by doing the things that scare you. So I stopped myself from writing a single word on LinkedIn because I wanted to know exactly what I wanted to write about. This is who I am. This is the subject. And my coach at some point said, just write. You'll find your voice. I'm not even sure I found my voice, and I've been writing for at least 4 or 5 months. But now I don't care. I put it out there, and I'm like, okay, that's it. One will go well, one won't. So, and at least I'm confident I'm posting. And then the other thing is that as far as you keep challenging yourself, which I do, I always try something new. I'm now training in somatic coaching fully. Then you will feel self-doubt, right? Because you're in your comfort zone. So people are super confident. Sometimes you feel like either you are, maybe, I don't know, there's something wrong with you, yes, or you're just not challenging yourself enough.
So, often the older we get, we can feel set in our ways a little bit. And sometimes making that change is difficult. What holds us back sometimes, do you think, from being able to make a change?
I would challenge whether we really get set in our ways as we get older, because I know a lot of people, and I don't. I'm just as curious could be, wanting to learn new things. And this is probably something that, again, hurts us, this belief that as you get older, you're not flexible, you just want to do things your way. And it may be true for some people, but I also find a lot of people are really willing to, because you are questioning yourself a lot more. When I work with people, and this is generalization, but when I work with younger people, I find that it's much more difficult for me to coach them because they're not as open to going in and questioning themselves. But older people are much more introspective, so much more willing to say, what am I doing wrong and how can I change it? And in terms of what stops anyone, personally, I always find that fear is at the bottom of a lot of the things that keep us stuck. There may be other emotions, but when you dig deep, fear is really like it's the bottom of the river. You got lots of emotions flowing. At the bottom of the river, there is often a lot of fear.
When you look back, what have you learned on the journey that you've been? Do you feel all of that is just part of the process and now you're finding yourself more, you're having a stronger sense of purpose, a stronger sense of direction? What would you have said to a younger Anna?
I mean, it's easy to look back and have regrets and think, I should have done this, I should have done that. I think that we often tend to do that, but you need to look back and learn from it, but not just beat yourself up for what you've done. Yeah, if I could potentially, there's lots of stuff. If I went back even to university times, I probably would not study economics anymore because it was not right for me. I don't know what else I would have done, but I think that probably getting something like coaching earlier on in my life, maybe 10 years ago, I'm not sure I was ready for it, my 20s or 30s, but let's go in, because there was that voice that I wasn't listening to. So having coaching, I do ontological coaching, which is really the study of being. So getting that type of coaching earlier on would probably have set me on my path a bit earlier. One of the things that made me also, to help me in making this shift, was at some point, it's two things. I was reading this book and they were doing this, often they do these exercises about what do you want people to say at your, funeral speech? And I don't like, I'm Italian, we don't have a good relationship with death. So I don't want to think about it. So I've decided it's about my 80th birthday and people are giving a speech. And what do I want them to say? And when you actually write down and you pick 3 people and you write down that speech. And I did it and I thought, I need to change something in my life for people to actually say this when I'm 80, because at the moment I'm not on that path.
Interesting.
I'm really not on that path. And it was a very interesting exercise. And I thought, okay, what can I do? So the only thing I would say is was there a way to start this path a bit earlier? But then everything I've done, even the pain and the hurt and I remember days, especially sometimes in some agency, I remember waking up in the morning and feeling like, I just can't do this. I can't do this anymore. And then I would do it. And I would do it month after month, just knowing that I couldn't do it anymore. And I let myself get to real breaking point before I decided. So that's the one thing you think, did I need to hurt myself that much before deciding? But maybe that was the case for me. I needed to get completely broken before I made the decision.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because all these things play into who we are. And if those things hadn't have happened, then maybe this wouldn't have happened. What would you say to others that are feeling like you felt, maybe what I'm going through at the moment? Is it different for men and women? What would you say to them? What do we do? How can we approach it? What would you share to others?
First, is it different for men and women? I can't say that I coach a lot of women, but I also coach some men. Yes, women maybe are more open to sharing their emotions and to cry. Men don't cry with me, which is a shame, because I think I'm in favor of crying because it's good for you. So maybe women are just a bit more open also to admitting vulnerability and self-doubt and lack of confidence. But I think deep down, the way that we all feel is very much the same, especially when you're losing your job, which is happening to a lot of people. I did an exercise with this group of people the other day where we went into the body, and the grief and sense of loss that was coming up was quite surprising, because it's a loss. And also you are at a moment in life where, maybe I need to take another path. So I need to leave 20, 25 years behind of who I've been. So it's very difficult. Advice that I would say, as I said, it's, I've made a shift in the sense that I left a profession and started another one, going on my own. So that's quite a big shift. And it may be right for somebody. I would definitely say get help. And I know I'm a coach, so it seems a bit obvious to say get a coach. But whatever the help is, I think that what is great about coaching is that it's, when you ask friends and family, they all have a point of view.
Yeah.
There's something they inevitably want for you. While having this completely, neutral person who's helping you, for me, was incredibly helpful. So getting help, getting supported, And there's a lot that you can do in terms of, I did quite a lot of work to find my personal purpose, for example, and really dig deep into what you love and where your heart is. Because I said before, it's hard to know. It's hard to say, okay, I'm not a strategist, and now I'm starting on this new journey. What is it really? How do I take those layers off and discover what else I can do? That takes time. So I would say find ways to really work on yourself and be supported. And then the other thing I would also say is, as I said before, sometimes it's not completely changing your life. Is if you're lacking purpose and if you're okay in your job, if you're lucky enough to still have a job, you can find it somewhere else. For me, it started with yoga. So the first step was really becoming a yoga teacher. And I didn't realize till then, it was nice to have a new challenge and learn something new, but also teaching yoga and getting people to tell me how calm they felt, how well they slept after my classes. That was already a few steps towards serving and being useful in a different way. So you can do something on the side that gives you that purpose. And maybe, later on when you retire, you can, do something else. So it doesn't have to be such a big shift. So just find ways and to add more joy to your life. Part-time, full-time, 1 hour a week, whatever. But do that. The last thing I would say, whatever you do, whenever there is a change, sometimes it's changing roles, being promoted, becoming a leader. It's just accept fear and emotions. Just accept them. Work through them. We often don't even have the vocabulary, right, to say how we feel. I'm feeling good, I'm feeling bad, I'm happy, I'm sad. There's so many more. So it's working on your emotions and accept the ups and the downs. That is a big learning for me, for sure.
That's really nice. Coming to a close now, how would you sum up your first act, being a strategist in advertising, to your second act now, where you are finding you have maybe it's your calling? How would you sum up that difference and how you feel now compared to maybe where you were 10 years ago or 10 years ago?
The first thing that comes to mind is, but it may seem a bit negative. I feel like in my first act, I have been acting. I think I've been acting. I think I've been on a journey to discover myself, but always feeling I was in the box, right? My partner actually, funny enough, always says, and also because of the weather and me being, I think I was African in a previous life. I love the sun, I love the heat. And he always says, you are a little yellow bird in a cage. And I think that I was a bit of a bird in a cage. And I think my second act is possibly, from a financial point of view, it's going to be poor. But I think I've opened the cage and I've opened the wings. And I am definitely happier. And when I help people, when I see people transform, I was talking about joy. It goes beyond that. I mean, it's them. I always say it's you. It's your job. It's not me. But to be able to witness that transformation it's a satisfaction that I'm going to say something really big. Even when I won awards, I always wanted to win an APG award and I won it, I won a couple and I was super happy and that's great. But sometimes when you're just working with one person and you see them transform their lives, it's possibly a bigger fulfillment than that.
What a lovely place to close our conversation, Anna. Just thank you very much. From that post that you wrote on LinkedIn really resonated with me, and just having the conversation with you today is just giving me the confidence of believing in yourself, face the fear and do it anyway. I think was one of the expressions. I can't remember who said that. Face the fear and do it anyway. So it's been really lovely speaking to you. Just to feel that we're not alone. We're all working through this together. It's a journey. Finding joy again. That's come through some of the conversations that I've had. I think that's really important. Just find those small moments.
Support each other.
Yeah.
We're in the same boat.
Anna, thank you very much. It's been a joy to speak to you, and I hope we'll catch up again soon. Thank you.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. Thank you.
Lifequake. Well, that's not a term I'd heard before. So I had a quick Google to see where that's come from, and it was a term coined by Bruce Feiler in his book, Life is in the Transitions, Mastering Change at Any Age. It refers to a major life disruption that has a profound and lasting impact on an individual's life. These elements are often unexpected and can create significant emotional, psychological, and logistical upheaval. So a few key takeaways for me from the conversation with Anna. First of all, it was fascinating to hear how Anna's inner voice grew louder and how it was impacted by those life events such as the loss of her father and being made redundant. And both of those sort of served as a catalyst for her career change, prompting deep reflection on her meaning, purpose and joy in her life. A moment she described as the universe giving her the option to listen and pursue her new calling. She also spoke really interestingly, I think, about fear and the importance of managing it, highlighting that while fear can be paralysing, it's crucial to face and accept it to make any transition. She shared that after her 28 years in her career, she felt like she was acting in her first act. Only now does she feel in true flow with her work, finding profound rewards in helping others, much more than in her initial career. She also touched on the shared experience that many of us are going through, especially at this stage in our lives, undergoing significant transitions and facing similar challenges. Sharing these experiences and realising we're not alone, of course, provides a powerful source of comfort, one I know I can personally vouch for. So thank you again, Anna, for such an enlightening chat, another to add to my list, helping me to understand more about who I am and where I'm heading next. So that's it. Until next time. Until then, take care and goodbye.